his own personal use.
You can worry about revenue when he builds a building.
Well, that won't happen soon, don't worry.
He's gotta get the revenue for the building.
Gotta get
Alright.
something built first.
I'm gonna start the recording.
Don't put more money on it.
Here
Okay,
we go.
yes. Are we on?
We
Oh, we
are
are
on.
on. Okay, well, everybody, welcome to the City of Escalon Annual Budget Workshop, and out there, anybody who's listening on the internet as well, thank you for coming this evening. And at this point, we're gonna turn it right over to Tammy for the presentation.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I am presenting the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. Our goal is to present an overview of staff's proposal for fiscal year 2021 city budget in a straightforward, thorough, and understandable manner while providing the opportunity for questions, dialogue, and input. Staff will present the proposed city budget for fiscal year 2021, and then staff will, as has continued its efforts to maintain fiscal constraints in order to be sustainable. Council directed staff to maintain a fiscally responsible approach to providing local services and continue to present the city budget in a straightforward and understandable manner. Our objectives: deliver a balanced city budget using minimal reserves, maintain the current level of service to the community, incorporate the fiscal year 2021 council manager goals, keep the city's budget process open and easily understood. Staff is requesting questions, dialogue, and input on the proposed fiscal year 2021 city budget from the city council and the community. The council by consensus recommend to staff bring the city budget forward as proposed or implement any revisions they deem appropriate and present the city budget for adoption at the city council meeting following the workshop. City budget is a key communication tool which illustrates to the public the city's strategic direction, sources of funding, and types of expenditures. This presentation seeks to distill the budget document into a useful set of tables, charts, and diagrams for the use of the general public. It is developed by staff based on policy direction from the city council, reviewed by the public and council, and eventually adopted by the council. Staff then implements the city budget over the course of the fiscal year, which is July 1st through June 30th. The city's total combined proposed annual budget for fiscal year 2021 is $12,933,000, and of this, $4,031,000 is for the capital improvement program. The budget is linked to the city council, city manager's strategic goals developed each year. These goals are at the heart of what our community expects from its local government. In turn, these goals are woven throughout the fiscal year 2021 annual budget, which allocates the resources necessary to achieve our shared vision. For fiscal 2021, goals that have been proposed are the maintenance of McHenry Sewer Trunk Line, the Phase 2, construction of the new Well 1A, explore the energy efficiency including solar throughout all city departments, explore areas of funding for SSJID surface water connection, the continued review of our sign ordinance, and continue efforts for meter replacement program. Status of the 1920 City Council City Manager goals: maintenance of the McHenry Sewer Trunk Line Phase 2 is currently working through right-of-way approvals from property owners. It is anticipated to be completed in this coming 2021 fiscal year. Design and construct new Well 1A. The design has been completed, the funding application is submitted, and the rate study completed. We are just currently awaiting the funding approval from the state. Wastewater treatment plant evaluation was completed and is currently being utilized to establish moving forward with improvements while exploring energy efficiency and solar. Review of our sign ordinance. Staff will be scheduling meetings to obtain comment from the community in July and August, which actually we've set one date for July 14th. The meter replacement program is being evaluated with the energy efficiency projects. So for fiscal year 2021, the city's projecting $11,594,000 in revenues with a total of $12,933,000 in expenditures. This results in our expenditures exceeding our revenues, or what is commonly called a deficit. The balance of the funds needed to cover the projected expenditures will come from special revenue funds or reserves of related funds. Citywide revenue source categories is broken out here. Our charges for, they are in order of their revenue amount, so charges for services for sewer, our property tax, other tax, which include Measure K, local transportation fund, districts and franchise fees, other revenues, charges for services, water fund, sales tax, charges for services in our general fund, which include recreation, fines, penalties, and transit revenues, which includes grant monies, revenues from other government sources, which includes our gas tax monies, use of monies and property, which is interest and rental fees, charges for services in the storm, and then our licenses and permits.
On your storm, on the sewer services, is that both?
That's both municipal and industrial.
Okay, later in the discussion, or I'd like to ask you, are we considering joining them together?
For sewer, municipal, and industrial,
Right. Other cities do that. My question is, why don't we?
because our systems have run separately, so they have separate charges, so there wasn't a need to run them or to charge. I mean, technically, they are joined, but they're still tracked separately.
Yeah, tracking's fine. I'm just curious. The reason I bring it up is because of the capacity that would enable us to have a lot more capacity if we were to consider the two.
So that is what is part of what's going on with the current study,
So we are gonna look at that.
yes.
Because it would be less of a financial impact on us if we were to look at it in that light. Because by taking Pond 4, which is rarely used by the commercial side, and we were to divide that in half, I was told we could pick up almost like 800 units there.
So, well, first thing, those two systems run separately out at the treatment plant. So
understand.
looking at the combining, yes, that's what the study showed, and that's what's still being explored.
Okay, good.
So this is just a visual, in a pie graph of where all the revenues, are coming from. I apologize, I should have went forward while we were talking about that. So citywide expenditure categories, our general fund, is at 4.3 million. The domestic sewer fund's at 2.3, almost 2.4. Water's at 2.2. The industrial's at 1.8. Special revenue transportation funds, 853. Our gas tax, 489. Transit fund is at 408. Storm at 218. And police funds at 115,000. Our districts are at 73, almost 74,000, and then developer funds, we have expenditures in there of 34,000. And again, there's a pie chart of those. The general fund is the primary operating fund of the city. The general fund is the fund most people refer to when they talk about the city budget. The general fund pays for community services such as police services, community development, street maintenance and landscape, animal control, weed abatement, park maintenance, community center, personnel, finance, city management, city council, facilities maintenance, and the library. For the fiscal year 2021, the city is projecting general fund revenues of almost 3.9 million with a total of 4.3 million in expenditures, resulting in a deficit of 485,000. This deficit includes reducing our equipment reserve by 55,000, our debt service for the civic center and community center of almost 166,000, an increase back into the fund from the sewer fund, the industrial sewer for the 104,000, and then a decrease of the deficit by 368,000 in the operating budget. Equipment reserves are funds within the general fund specifically promised for equipment expenditures. Debt service reserves are funds within the general fund specifically promised for the civic center and community center debt repayments. As is Escalon's practice, the revenue projections in this budget are conservative. The city's two largest sources of revenue are property tax and sales tax. They compromise up to 73% of the general fund revenue. For fiscal year 2021, the revenues are $214,000 or 5.2 less than the adopted fiscal year 1920 and of $4,083,000. Property tax revenues include an approximate decrease of 1% from the adopted revenues for fiscal year 1920. Fiscal year 1920 is experiencing an increase of $34,000 or 1.8% from the adopted budget, but staff still put in a slight decrease there. Sales tax revenues includes an approximate decrease of $244,000 or 19.8% from the adopted budget revenue for fiscal year 1920. For fiscal year 1920, the city is experiencing a projected decrease of $214,000 or 17.4% from that adopted budget. The projected ending revenues for fiscal year 1920 are at almost $3.9 million, which is a decrease of 4.6% or $191,000 from the adopted budget. Most other revenues have remained stable within the general fund. So here's the general fund resources, and you can see at the top there, the property tax and retail sales tax are two biggest contributors. Other taxes would include, sorry, I'm trying to think what I have in there, would be our franchise fees, and a majority of that is franchise fees in there. Charges for services are license permits and fines, recreation revenues, monies from property, which is our interest, funds from other agencies, fines and forfeitures, and other revenue, to get the total general fund revenues at 4.2. And there is a pie graph to show that, where property tax and sales tax obviously make up the biggest chunk of those revenues. As is our practice with expenditure projections, we have made them conservative. Personnel costs for 2021 are actually $35,000 less, or 1.1% than the fiscal year 1920 adopted budget. There was a decrease. We delayed the hiring of a police officer position to January 2021. So with the recent promotion of Sergeant Lackey to Chief of Police, we will be recruiting internally for a sergeant. Once the internal candidate is promoted for sergeant, that will leave a vacancy for a police officer. So this budget actually proposes delaying that officer until January of 2021. Decrease for the part-time executive assistant that was actually laid off due to COVID. Negotiated salary increases and stepped increases of approximately $20,000, and then an increase of $35,000 in public employee retirement system. Overall operating budgets have actually decreased approximately $36,000 in the operational budgets.
Tammy, back on the general fund, and you got the, I don't know what page this is, it's in section 2, I believe, wait, it's in section 3. You're showing the pie graphs of the general fund, where the monies come from, and then below that, where the monies go. On the right-hand side, you have a list of things that apply to that chart. Property taxes, sales tax, taxes. What is current service charges? $204,410. What is that?
So that would be the fees that we collect for copies of police reports, for animal control, for recreation, those kinds of fees.
So it's clerical stuff.
Yes.
Okay, and then, on the bottom here, you got culture and leisure at 450,393. What is culture and leisure?
So that's the, expenditures in recreation, community center, and parks.
So it's a combination.
library.
It's our rec department, our, community center's debt service,
Yes.
and any work that relates to that environment. And then, where are the offsetting revenues for that? Are they up here above it?
Yeah, those, some of those would be within your current service charges for the recreation and your community center rentals. And
We
then,
don't have that broken down to what percentage is coming out of the, general fund, revenues to offset that 450,
it is broken out in the revenue section.
okay? What page would that be on?
It's in section 8.
Take a look at that for a minute here. All right, let's go down and see, where do you see it at? Property fines, license, property taxes, other revenues. The next page, maybe? Please?
So on in section, under section 8,
Uh-huh.
it's the 5th page back.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's, is it the one that says, general building?
No, one
Gen-
more page.
One more page. Says general rec, here we go.
Recreation.
Okay, use of monies and properties, it shows us in 2019, we had 22, 20, we had 22, and this year it's looking like 22, and a total of 23.
That's what we're projecting for this, or proposing for this
The
budget.
current, and let me ask you a question, what's interesting to me is that with all the COVID-19 we had, and we had so little activity, how can we be still near that number? I mean, we should have a severe deficit.
Okay, so if you look at recreation or current service charges.
Yes.
That are the bottom 2 lines, if you look at the projected for 1920,
And let me double here, boom, 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 yeah. Okay, yeah, it drops quite a bit,
yes.
and that makes sense, it drops $10,000 basically.
No.
Let's see, it says here
Drops about 55,000.
55,000, 139 to 128, is that what we're looking at?
Well, that's for the proposed year. If you
Uh-huh.
look for the projected,
The projected is right there,
the
78.
78,000,
Yeah,
and for the 1920, we were projecting,
so we're
or
putting
we
that
had
in the
topped it.
budget at 128, and thinking that we're only gonna spend 78?
No, the 78 is what we're expecting, that is what's projected for this current fiscal year, and what's being proposed in the current budget is the 128.
I see, so in other words, you were believing we're gonna be back to business and spending more money.
Well, that's revenues, that would mean if
Oh, revenues.
recreational sports came back in,
Okay.
then those would be the anticipated revenues, but there's also expenditures,
Right,
on the other side of that, if they don't come in, we wouldn't have those expenditures either.
okay. All right, I was just curious about all that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So for our general fund appropriation, public safety is almost 2.8 million, public works is 660,000, development services 595, culture and leisure 450, and management's 22,000, and then we have some transfers in, and out from, other funds for a total expenditure of 4,354,000 for the general fund.
That's our budget for this coming year?
Correct.
To the right of that, it says administration and negative 146,721, what's that?
Where are you
On
looking at?
the page that shows the graph, and the one I was asking about, the,
Oh, so the negative 146 is a combination of transfers in and what the costs are under management that aren't allocated out to the departments.
so that's money we borrowed.
So we transfer money from the gas tax into the general fund to
Right.
assist with streets and roads.
Sure.
So that's a portion of it, and then, and we transfer money into the general fund from SLESIF.
What is less of?
So that's a supplemental law enforcement fund.
Okay.
And that helps cover, some of the salaries and public safety, so this year, there's proposed 70,000 from that fund.
Okay.
Approximately 80,000 from the gas tax for general streets maintenance, and then 80,000 for, the backhoe that's in the capital outlay.
Back on that fund that you transferred from, for the police department, where is that money coming from?
It comes from the state and sales tax monies that,
So it's money allocated to the cities for the police?
correct,
And so that fund is replenished annually?
correct.
I see. And then we're able to use that money for salaries for our police department?
Yes, yes. We only
It's
use
not
a
a
portion.
revenue, it's not a revenue source though, is it? It's more of a tax.
It is.
Source.
So, but it is used, we use a portion of it for, salaries, but we use the other side of it a lot for other equipment replacement and those kinds of things.
All right, good enough. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So there's the graph of, all the expenditures.
And that's the general fund.
Yes.
Yeah, that helps.
Capital outlay, so included in the fiscal year 2021 budget is the appropriation of $55,150, which is a decrease of $32,000 from the adopted 1920 budget. And we will be replacing the following equipment: 10 computers, a laptop, projector, and these are all between City Hall, Public Works, and the Police Department. That's a total of $22,300. Replacement of a police vehicle mobile computer with a mount and installation, that's $13,750. Replacement of 2 body camera units, $5,600. Replacement of one of our computer servers, $11,500. And replacement of cat cages at the animal shelter of $2,000.
Question, on the replacement of the 10 computers, what's the longevity of what's the life of a computer?
Lives of the computers are between 3 and 5 years.
And that's because the software no longer will keep up with what's going on?
Pretty much. Some of our computers right now this year will have a lot where they're not supporting Windows 7 anymore, and then
Oh, yeah, that's pretty old stuff.
and then so we have some of those that we're still replacing and upgrading.
Now,
those.
when you replace those computers, are they're physically the units themselves or just the software?
The units themselves.
So they come rebooted with the 10 and the other ones, now what happens to the surplus? They're auctioned off?
No, most of the time, we have to destroy everything
Because
that's
of
in
the data.
there. So we don't. They're not usually any value to.
No. The
To
computers themselves, do they come with new monitors as well?
Yes.
So you're getting new monitors, new CPUs, a whole, and then the
Yes.
software with it?
Yes, not always the keyboard and the mouse. Most of the time, we recirculate
that?
those. We have in the past been reusing monitors. We haven't been replacing them when we actually had quite a few backup monitors. But we've used all of our backup monitors at this point. So we do keep some of the computers as backups for,
Something goes down?
yeah, so, or they're kept where they're not used very much, where being a little bit out of date is not,
Not critical?
critical.
Okay. Okay.
So the general fund reserve are funds that are segregated for future use. The city's general fund reserve set aside monies are for operating budget reserve, equipment reserve, and debt service reserve. So for fiscal year 2021, our operating revenues are proposed at $4,100,000, expenditures at 4.4, almost 4.5, with the deficit of 367,000. Transfers from other funds to the general fund is the gas tax, street maintenance for 140,000, traffic safety funds for 20,000, and then the supplemental law enforcement funds for 70,000. Did I say 20,000 or 70,000 on that one? The traffic safety funds come from fines and penalties that are charged. They actually go to a separate account. We transfer them in to apply towards the police department's budget.
Okay, so the 70 is where you talked about earlier, where it gets
Yes.
transferred. And then the 20 is from fines and other things?
Yes.
What happens to the money from cars that are picked up and, for like in a drug bust or something like that?
So if there's a vehicle that's impounded,
Yes.
they would pay us a release fee in order to go get their vehicle. So that's a part of our charges for service. And then,
If they abandon the vehicle, then what?
well, then the tow company takes care of that.
Do we get paid from the tow company for the costs?
No.
So it's a wash. We lose everything on that deal.
If we tow a vehicle, an instance, if we towed a vehicle for 30-day impound because the driver was suspended, and that driver never comes back and picks up the vehicle, generally the tow company then will file a lien fee. And so we
Takes the
see
car.
nothing on the
Yeah.
vehicle, because then they sell the vehicle outright. And I think you were alluding to asset forfeitures.
Right.
We haven't done any asset forfeiture in probably 6 years because of the changes, especially now in the last 2 years, the changes that the state has made in regards to what you have to
Do to get it,
meet. To get an asset forfeiture, it's almost impossible, and I
not worth it.
believe Councilman Legero can probably even attest to more to that, since we work with the DA's office normally in a conjunction to try and do asset forfeitures. It's almost ridiculous. I mean, it's
I get
more
it.
work than it's worth to get money
Yeah.
out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want you.
Unless you're dealing with major drug busts where you're
Yeah, unless it's a
seeing
major
hundreds of
heroin
thousands
bust,
of
yeah.
dollars.
All right.
Yeah, state doesn't want you doing it anymore,
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Typical.
We were punishing people.
There you go.
There was my commentary, I'm sorry.
There you go. Really appreciate it. Okay, so that is, so let me ask you a question, Chuck. The general fund budget's a little over $4 million this year. Last year was about 4.5, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's close enough, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Next question is, our overall budget, including the general fund, is what?
This year is 12.9.
So it's down from, what, 15 or 16?
Last year, I think it was even more than that. Let me look.
The general funding last year was 16,
It was 15.7,
right?
yes.
And then, of that, 4 point something of that was your general fund. So it left a
Correct.
balance of around 12 something. Then that was used for capital improvements, which we carry from one year to the next, depending on what we do with it.
Right.
All right, got it.
So general fund summary, or estimated beginning reserve balance for July 1st of 2020 is at 3.4 million. And our adopted budget last year actually had our beginning balance for July 1st of 2019 at 3.1, almost 3.2. But with the realized savings from the completed 18-19, it boosted that up. So then we will be taking out, and the 3.4 takes into consideration where I've projected 19-20 to end, even with a deficit in 19-20. So we're taking away the deficit of $367,952. We're taking out of the equipment reserves the $55,000, the debt service the $166,000, adding back in that $104,000 that we're receiving from the sewer industrial fund, with an estimated ending balance of June 30th, 2021 of 2.9 million. And then those funds would be broken down by an operating budget reserve of 1.6 million, equipment at 237, debt service at 704,000, and then our CalPERS unfunded liability reserve at 350,000.
And that represents 36.4%.
The operating budget reserve would remain at the 36.4, which our fiscal goals state to be at 33%. So the beginning reserve balance was $570,000 more than the estimated balance in the original fiscal year 1920 budget. And the ending reserve balance in this fiscal year 2021 is $85,000 more than the estimated in fiscal year 1920.
The allocated general fund reserve, general reserve fund is money that we pretty much set aside. That's not money that's gonna be put into action.
Correct.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said that that was an operating fund. It's not an operating fund.
No, that's money that we've set aside as an operating
I
reserve.
just wanna make sure I heard
Correct.
you right.
Yes, sorry
Okay,
if
good
I
enough.
spoke.
So going into deficit with that being new, I'm gonna ask, how often are we going in the deficit over the last few years? Is it a common thing, or is it something that's rare?
So in the last few years, so last year, our adopted budget projected 163,000 into the deficit. And the year before that, I think we still had a small deficit that was projected or proposed in the adopted budget, but typically when we get to the actuals and we finish out the fiscal year, we've not ended up with a deficit. So I have included in the 19-20 year a deficit, and I wanna say it's around 180,000, that is being projected. But part of the savings comes from, sometimes we have staff that do not take medical insurance, because they may get it from their spouse. But I still put that number in the budget, because if that person was to leave and somebody else came in, I'd have to pay those expenditures. So we realized some savings in those aspects, and I truly anticipate that our 19-20 budget, may not have a deficit, or it may have something less than 100,000 if it has a
The
deficit.
2021.
No, for 19-20. For 2021, that's still so volatile because of COVID
You don't
that
know.
it's kind of hard to see where that's gonna go, which is why, the deferred in hiring the police officer.
So back to 2019, basically, we came out better than we thought we were going to.
I'm anticipating that we
Oh,
will.
Okay,
Yes.
based on projections.
Mhm.
All right.
So to segue off Councilmember Bellinger's question, the way that I'm looking at this is despite the second quarter of 2020, with COVID, and again, you're budgeting your expenses high and your revenues low, also going into this next, the third quarter, fourth quarter this year. Despite all that, this is how we're gonna end up at, which again, is a lot more solid than I think, it could be a lot worse. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I mean, we've been fiscally responsible to set that reserve and been able to maintain it.
And this is the payday for that responsibility. This is the rainy day that everybody talks about. And so, okay.
Is this a revised number that you saw it and it's like, well, that's not a comfortable number and you've shaved things elsewhere as well? Or is that something that is just the way the numbers fell out?
A combination. It's a combination of both, because I knew that there was going to be lost revenues.
Right.
So, we were looking at those, and it's a combination. When the department heads were asked to give their budgets, they were asked to be conservative on them and no big purchases in this coming year. Most of us have been through this before, so we understand what that means, You look at the necessities of things, so that's where, we don't wanna lack on maintenance to get ourselves in an issue, but we don't wanna be, overzealous on things either.
When you're doing your projections, are you taking consideration, for example, Mr. Lear's project, and the fact that he might be in a situation where he pays us the money he owes us, is that in the projection as well?
No, not really.
So where will that money go if he does pay us?
Then it would go into the general fund.
General fund, so to boost it by 50 grand.
Well, some of it. No, when you're referencing the 50,000 that we were gonna defer for him,
Yes.
that was a portion of his developer impact fees.
Exactly.
So those fees would actually go into the developer special revenue funds
Okay.
and wouldn't go into general fund. But there is a balloon payment on that property, that's not due until 2021, later in March, yeah.
It's in March.
And, so that would go back into the general fund.
Okay, now the 50 grand is all, none of it's going to the general fund?
No, because that is developer impact fees, and those fees are set aside for, the maintenance of our infrastructure
Got it.
and the development of
No,
infrastructure.
just curious how it works. All right.
So the following items are capital outlay items that will be, funded from enterprise or special revenue funds. So the purchase of a John Deere 325 compact track loader, this would be funded through our gas tax monies for the use on streets. Purchase of the 2 new portable 6-inch pumps, that comes from sewer, and that is a carryover from the current fiscal year. The pricing was coming back high, and so we kind of held off on purchasing those, hoping that the pricings will change for us. A pipeline camera that will be utilized in both sewer and water. Purchase replacement chlorinator, from the water fund, which would be at our well 1A. Annual replacement of our aerators for both our domestic and industrial sewer. a new transit bus that's purchased through PITSMA funding, and AVL equipment for the transit buses.
Tim, a question on the annual replacement of the aerators. Now, might that possibly be something that's held off until we get that study back from,
So it could be,
Sure,
yes.
yeah.
So we typically,
Idea.
those are purchased, usually between January and June, because they're usually in correlation with the industrial season. So when we purchase for industrial season, we usually purchase the ones for
Right.
municipal also. And it's somewhere, we have to leave a time frame in there because it takes a while to
Sure,
get them. So somewhere between January and June is when we purchase those. So we have time where we can evaluate where we're gonna be at.
right?
On the pipeline camera at the $65,000, is this a replacement camera or a new camera to put in our equipment fleet?
It is, Justin, can you confirm that is a replacement, right?
Yes, it is. It's a replacement of one that really hasn't worked in the last few years. We've been trying to get it to work, and it doesn't quite work, and then we have to hire out, which is fairly expensive. So it is a replacement.
How much in the last couple of years when that camera hasn't worked have we spent on rental or services for someone to operate a camera for us?
In the last few years, we haven't spent much for the reason because we've just gone without. But for instance, we had to TV 10,000 linear feet back in, I believe it was 18 from Aero Construction for the pipeline. And it was a $16,000 bill. It's $1.55 per linear foot. It adds up really quick, and we've just been hindering ourselves on doing like we want to be able to go out and inspect the new construction pipe that's going in, looking for laterals so we can know where they're at, making sure they're connected right, looking for offsets. And stuff like that. We just haven't been doing it because of finances, to be honest.
What's the life expectancy of the new camera?
It should last around anywhere 20 years the way we take care of things.
All right. And these are coming from special funds, not from the general fund where we're having a deficit in our reserve, is that correct?
Correct,
Okay, so that money
That's
would be
the-
stuck for the sewer and water department
yes.
alone. The other question would be on the track skid steer, but now that I understand, it's a gas tax, that won't do anything for our,
No, it won't do anything.
our
for-
reserves, because I'm looking
Yeah,
at that
and-
going, because I struggle why we need a new skid steer. And
So,
at $80,000 as well, that's an expensive skid steer.
And that price was put in there before Justin had gotten an estimate, which the estimate came in around 72,000. But whatever we don't spend of that will just remain in our gas tax for,
Suggest we revisit what we're buying and check another,
Vendors.
manufacturer.
sure.
71,000 for a skid steer is way too expensive, unless you're buying every possible option on it.
Justin,
It's
do you,
not-
is there anything special on this?
Well, the only thing different is it's a John Deere track loader compared to a Bobcat, which John Deere is more expensive. But
Yes.
in our experience, we've had better luck as far as maintaining our own equipment with John Deere. We've had more mechanics available for the John Deere. The attachments that are available for us to use are cheaper to rent and purchase with the John Deere. But the overall purchase from the get-go is more expensive. You are correct.
And what kind of usage are you expecting to get out of this? How many hours are you gonna put on this thing a year? If you don't have one
It's
now?
hard to say, but overall, we really in water, streets, parks, weed abatement, storm and wastewater treatment plant is going to be used quite a bit. We're looking for jackhammer attachments on this. For instance, we had a road issue in front of Marv Val where the road lifted, and it cost us a little over 10 grand and about almost a year's time of waiting for a contractor to get in. But with this track loader and a week's rental of an attachment or a purchase, we are in-house good at taking care of it ourselves.
Right. And we don't buy attachments for any of our excavators or backhoes for that use?
We don't buy any attachments for it. We don't have, only thing we actually currently have is a backhoe. We don't have excavator.
So we don't have
we
a
use now,
hammer
so we don't
attachment for
have
our
a treatment
excavator?
plant for a few months for sludge, and that's it. And we used to in the past coming here, the school district and the city would borrow equipment. It's been about 10 years, and we would utilize their Bobcat quite often. But when myself and new management took over, we just didn't feel like that was the best thing to do, so we've just kind of gone without.
All right, I'd like to talk more about that offline before we get ready to buy that. I know
Yeah,
a few
definitely.
people in the
I'm also
industry that
gonna be
sell
doing
equipment,
more,
so.
quotes for this as well. This was just one of the quotes that come in, so this definitely isn't the final sticker price on this for sure.
And we typically try to do 3 bids for any kind of equipment that we purchase.
Makes sense. I have a question for Justin. Justin, on this camera for the water and sewer, I can understand the sewer application. Explain to me the water application.
It's basically the same thing, Mr. Alves, when it comes into the water. With the water, it's for new construction. We want to be able to, like, for instance, over on the country, when they go in and install the infrastructure, we want to be able to go in and inspect the internal part of the pipe. We want to be able to note where these services are coming off, so when we have water leaks in the future, we have a better understanding of where to dig in the road, and we're not guessing through waters and the cracks in the road and stuff like that. And also for mapping, so we can find out how far valves are apart, or for missing valves that have been paved over, stuff like that.
How big is this water camera, this camera? How physically, what's the dimensions of it?
The camera itself, physically, if you look at it, is anywhere 2 to 3 feet long, but the overall part of the camera that we're looking at will go anywhere from 4-inch pipe up to a 60-inch pipe for inspection.
What's the circumference? It's round, I'm assuming.
No, it's not. It's got wheels on it, I believe, doesn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, they have wheels on them.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, it's good for 4 to 6 inch pipe, right?
4 and above,
4 and
4
above,
to 60-inch.
60 inches, 5 foot.
Correct.
for up to 5
And
feet.
also, Councilmember Mayor Swift was with us, I believe it was about 2 years ago, and demoed a sewer trailer with us that we were impressed with and that we wanted. But just to give you an example, that ticket price came back at $333,000, and then I also got another quote for $229,000. So we're not here looking for what City of Modesto, City of Stockton has. I just need something to be able to pull out of a truck with a screen on it to be able to put into a sewer or a water line or some kind of inspection to be able to help us out and to start noting for our maps.
Okay.
all right.
And we have all the funds available for the $180,000 bus
Yes.
in the fund?
They're not in the fund, but John Ando's on the line also. And these are special grant monies that we get. And for those two funds, I think they're due to expire.
In June of 2023.
Thank you.
And we have a cooperative agreement with the San Joaquin Council of Governments. So once we purchase the bus, we simply submit a request for reimbursement and they immediately reimburse the city for the funds.
Is it gas or diesel, John?
It's going to be gas right now, but with the new changes by the California Air Resources Board in relation to zero emissions, we are studying, because I'll be presenting to the council a zero emissions bus rollout plan for implementation by fiscal year 2026. We may end up just getting an electric bus.
Right,
So we're studying those costs right now.
All right.
Thank you.
By 2026, we'll no longer be able to operate gasoline or diesel buses in the city's fleet.
Interesting.
So do we stall until the very end on purchasing that $180,000 bus with those funds and apply those to?
What's
maybe-
that?
Do we hold off on spending the $180,000 on a bus now?
We'll lose it if
Knowing-
we don't use it.
Will we have till,
We'll lose it in 2023 if we don't use it, but the problem is bus 102 had an engine failure and the bus has close to 115,000 miles. It's starting to fail on us and the
Okay.
maintenance is starting to get costly. So it's appropriate to make the change now.
that makes sense then?
Yeah.
And the surplus bus is sold out later?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll surplus the bus and whatever revenues that we generate from the surplus, as we've done in years past, will go into the transit fund to offset the costs of providing transit.
Is that a
which
public
would,
auction?
Pardon me?
Is that we presented at a public auction?
Yes, we used a public auction. The city, we've used, I think Maloney's
Yes.
in the past. Maroney's, thank you, to auction our previous 2 buses that we had.
The Lions Club needs to buy one of those.
I know what you were thinking. I can see the look in your eyes.
All right. Any other questions on this?
No.
Okay. So, included in the budgets are the budget at a glance, the general fund summary, capital outlay expenditures, city budget fund analysis, revenue projections, expenditure projections, and our capital outlay. City's capital improvement, I'm sorry, that was capital improvement program. There at the bottom, I said that wrong. The city's capital improvement program is a 3-year planning program. of current and future capital projects. Typically, projects include street reconstruction, overlays, water, sewer, and storm improvements, constructions and/or renovations of city facilities, park developments and improvements, land acquisitions, and city beautification projects. Revenue sources can come from all of 4 of our city funds. However, most of the city's special revenue funds go to CIP projects. The CIP summary and the full CIP can be found in section 10 of the budget. So for fiscal year 2021, capital improvement projects are totaled at $4 million. And the following are the most significant projects. Our carryover projects from fiscal year 1920 is our 2020 slurry seal project, which is scheduled to start in the 2nd or 3rd week of July. Our Jordanolo water service, that should be Walnut water service realignment and street reconstruct. Jordanolo's.
Isn't that done though, Walnut?
Jordanolo's done.
Right, yeah.
It should read Walnut. Walnut is the one that we didn't get done this year. It went out to bid, we've awarded the project, so that one should be starting soon.
Let me ask you a question. We're doing these slurries, and is that with the gravel on top?
Yes, the type 2 slurry, so there's a type 1 and a type 2. What we did over on Jordanello has the gravel that's in it, so it's not so loose on top. We've experienced with the county, we're kind of trying to stay away with what the county did for us just because that gravel was too loose. And if you go over to Jordanello, you'll kind of see that we switched to a type 2 slurry, which isn't as loose gravel.
Yeah, I like it better. Are we doing any more of the patching of the streets, like the cracks? We had that company come out, or we did it one year where we came in, we took all those fractures in the roads and filled them?
Yes, we still do a crack sealing. I probably will most likely towards the end of summer we do that in-house. We rent equipment and take care of it ourselves.
Let me ask you this, on that slurry, before you do the slurry, is there any road prep at all, or you just go over the top of it?
No, the cracks are filled before the slurry gets in that way, because if not, the road's just gonna break up within a matter of months to a year anyway.
Absolutely, yeah, all the dirt and stuff needs to be cleaned out, and then it needs to be primed and then slurried. Is that the
Correct.
process?
They go through and they blow out all the cracks, they sweep up everything, fill in the cracks, and then when the road looks level and filled, then they will do their overlay.
Perfect, all right, good enough.
So for new projects for 2021, we have the phase 2 of the McHenry Sewer trunk line, construction of our well number 1A, Elizabeth Avenue reconstruction and water line replacement, our annual industrial pond sludge removal, and then again our 2021 various streets for slurry seal and crack seal, at our wastewater treatment plant, roadway and berm improvements. And then we've proposed installation of 3 backstops in our parks for additional areas of practice.
On that-
And
Go ahead.
potentially, it could be a place where we end up playing some games with, what we're seeing with COVID. Separation is a key thing of crowds, separating crowds. So having
Breaking
the
them up.
other ball fields may give us that opportunity to separate out some of that.
On that $350,500 for the removal of the sludge out of the pond, is that annual?
Correct.
And we have to take that to a special dump?
They take it, the current contractor takes it to, it's land applied.
A land what?
Land applied, so they take it to an agricultural area and they land apply it.
They put it back in the soil?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a no-no. Huh,
Depends upon what it tests at and what your farmers will take.
okay, so they test it. What are they looking for when they're testing it?
Ooh, I don't know. Justin, do you know what they look when in those samples? I think it has certain levels in it, but I'm not.
Is it it couldn't be nitrates. It
Yeah,
was
they're looking for nitrates, looking for calcium, and they're looking for fungi and stuff that would hinder the crops that they have.
Interesting.
When we do the sludge removal and when we replace the aerators and the industrial side is involved, how is that cost passed on?
So, both are included in their current rates. Those costs have been based, the rates have been based off of those costs.
And I know that there was a problem, the industry's had an issue with the sludge removal and the documentation of it. Has that been addressed?
Absolutely.
Excellent, thank you.
There's not been many questions these last couple of years, so.
That last time was fun.
Enterprise funds are self-supporting activities that provide services on a user charge basis. City operates 4 enterprise funds: water, sewer, stormwater, and public transit. Total fund balances for the water, sewer, stormwater, and public transit are estimated to end the budget year of 2021 at water with 4.6 million, sewer at sewer industrial at 277,000, domestic at 3.8, and the domestic side of it is higher because we got loan monies to complete the sewer lift station and 2 more phases of the trunk line. So we still have some of those monies in there. Stormwater is 421,000 and transit has 197,000.
Where's the water set aside for the plant, the pipeline? Where's that water money at?
It is within the water fund.
Do we know the amount?
Yes.
I think it's like 700,000, isn't it?
I believe that's what it's projected to be at the end of this fiscal
is.
year. Yeah, so we're starting the fiscal year at 628. We'll sell the water for 104,000. It should end the year at around 733,000.
Is there ever a chance that we negotiate a higher rate for what we're selling our water for, or is it just stuck there?
It's kind of stuck there because it's based on what SSJID charges to the other users.
Well, they charge a lot more than that. I mean,
Not to the other cities.
oh, I see what you're saying.
So Tracy pays us the 104,000,
Correct.
but they also pay SSJID for that water.
Exactly.
So ours is in addition to what they have to pay
Right.
SSJID.
Understood.
Yeah. The city, we received the authorization from the state to move forward with our new well. We've submitted for funding approval. Part of the funding approval requires a rate study providing evidence that the rates will support the repayment, and this was completed in November 2019. Monies collected from the city of Tracy will continue to be set aside for future connection of the South San Joaquin water treatment plants.
So Tammy, it's part of the 4.6 million, it's part of the 4.6 million, the assumption that we'll be able to go and get that loan, and therefore that's that loan money's in there?
It does not have loan monies in there.
Okay,
No, that's the balance of it. Without the loan, I believe.
all right, right.
Okay, so for our total sewer, we have 4.1 million, industrial is at 277 and domestic at 3.8. Based on the rate study that was completed in 2016, the last sewer rate increases were issued in August, or were instated in August of 2019. Before we can issue any future rate changes, we would have to do a new rate study. And right now, I just don't think it's appropriate with the study that's going on at the wastewater treatment plant. So once we have a better direction of where we're going there, would be the time that we would want to do a rate study. Industrial rates do include the repayment of the interfund loan to the general fund, and it currently has an estimated balance of $119,663. The McHenry lift station was completed in February of 2020. Phase 1 of the McHenry trunk line has been completed, and Phase 2 is scheduled, of course, for our fiscal year 2021.
Do you know how much we picked up in terms of EDUs by doing that completion of that line?
So we've only did a portion of the completion of the line, but once that line is completed,
Right.
I think we may have capacity of an extra 300 to 400 EDUs, if not more.
Interesting.
I mean,
That's big.
based on our conversations with the engineers, the redesign, or the redoing that line makes a big difference. And Justin, I don't know if you have any additional input on that.
No, you're exactly right. Between the pipeline and what improvements we can add out at the treatment plant is what's gonna make that rise for sure.
Okay, you said approximately 300, is that what you said?
Mhm.
So with what we currently have, what are you looking at? EDUs, total.
Well, we have to address the plant, so, I mean, you would be looking at 400, 450, somewhere in there,
Okay, good enough.
and that's probably conservative.
Good, we like conservative.
Storm is at 421,000, estimated ending balance. Storm operating costs are currently exceeding the revenues. The process to raise these rates would require a vote to the residents and are handled differently than water and sewer. There has been increased costs due to the MS4 permitting that's required by the state of California.
Of course.
We continually have additional steps that we need to take. Transit Enterprise Fund is essentially funded by pass-through revenue. The level of transit services is directly related to the revenue we receive. A private provider through a contract, which will be with the city of Modesto effective July 1, operates the city transit service. So that is all of my presentation. I don't know if there's any additional questions.
Let's see, let me go over a couple things I underlined, things, let me see if I got anything for you.
If we were to move forward with hiring the officer before January of '21, what does that do?
Depending upon, it would probably be approximately another, somewhere in the neighborhood to 40 to 50,000.
Are we?
Well, I shouldn't say that. I actually should say it would be probably another 55,000 because we have reserve officers that are in the pipeline, so it probably wouldn't take that long for the recruitment.
That was the other question. If we were to wait, are we talking about starting the recruitment process in January or having somebody on board ready to start in January '21?
Well, if we had to currently hire, this time we have, at least 2 fully trained level 1 reserves that we could, if they, I know one of them wants a full-time job, the other one wants to remain a full-time reserve. So we could immediately fill that. We also have, an additional level 1 reserve that's in the FTO program that is, motivated to get out of it, because he was a full-time officer at one point, and then because of family issues left, but he's now back, and he wants another job. So I would say that if we were to hire, we could hire immediately, and then with what we have in our current pipeline, probably in 4 to 6 months, you could hire again if you had to.
So I don't like the delay in the fact that we're promoting internally and then we're looking at promoting a sergeant internally. You know, it's taken a while to get to this point, and for 55 grand, to me, that's money well spent to bring that person on board and make sure that your staffing is where it needs to be. So that would be my one change.
I mean, it's only gonna cross, and so your deficit's, instead of 367,000, it's gonna be like 420,000, something like that. And again,
Correct.
you know, knowing where we're looking at the end of all this, despite all these conservative projections, I think, I agree with Councilmember Legero. I think it's a risk that's worth taking at this point.
There's some other place in that budget we can shave off a little bit of that money somewhere, make it a little bit more digestible? Not sure, I'm just asking that.
Yeah.
You gotta ask those questions, that's a good question.
We want to keep it at a 33%
Right.
reserve, and we're at 36.4, I think it
Correct,
is. So we have some
correct.
room there that I think that's justified if we had to dip in there for that.
Yeah, I mean, to weather a storm like this and to be in the shape that we're projected to be in, and again, I'm saying this knowing how you typically work these budgets. I think we're doing okay. I think we got the room.
Yeah, we just, I think the years of doing this are paying off, and no one anticipated COVID, no one anticipated what was gonna happen this year, so had we not had that kind of reserve, think of the damage that we'd be suffering right now. But, we're still looking at the 33%. We got enough room in there, and I think public safety has got a lot on their plate right now, and I don't think that we need to hamstring the new chief, with staffing issues right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So I would imagine when it comes to that point, during the meeting, which we probably ought to be starting in just a minute here, yeah, I would imagine when it comes to that point of looking at adopting the budget, that might be a good idea to throw that amendment in. So,
All right. So, my closing summary is the city must continually strive to
Whoa, whoa, I
provide
have a couple
sustainable,
questions on
so, sorry.
Can we get these questions before you do a summary?
Sure.
First question is, on your PERS, we put in 35,000, that came from the general fund, I assume, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what is our obligation in PERS and where are we?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by
Well,
obligation?
Currently, obviously, we have to pay into PERS in order to satisfy the requirement. What is our requirement at this point, and how are we dealing with it, and where are we at? In other words, are we in the rears, or are we up to date?
Yes, we do have some unfunded liability in there.
At what rate?
And I don't know the exact number, but
Is
I
it
want,
catastrophic?
I don't think so, not in my opinion. I think we are about 74-75% funded.
Okay, but,
I wanna say that I think it leaves us about, I really hate to say a number, but I wanna say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million.
okay. All right, I'd like some clarification on that when you get a chance.
Sure.
I'd like to know where we are in that, because that's always sticking in the back of my mind. That's a big one, and I don't want to be surprised when we're trying to do something, all of a sudden, boom. we got
Right.
that.
Agree.
So I want to know where we're at on that.
What's the drop dead date on that?
Well, there's not a drop dead date on it. The projections out of paying the unfunded, I think, go out to like 2032, but there's supposed to be a big hit in 2024, which is why we have that
But we
one
started shifting at
amount.
one time, I know we had this discussion a few budgets ago, and we discussed the funding mechanism for that, and one of the ideas came up with property taxes to move into that. Did we ever do that, or? We
I-
talked about that. Remember, we were taking money and we were using it to supplement raises or tip, bonuses or whatever. Then we talked about adjusting that money into the PERS.
Oh, so we have been setting aside monies for the PERS, unfunded liability. I think we have 350,000 in there.
Right, I saw that.
So I think you were referencing when we used to gauge bonuses if the property tax came
Correct,
in increased,
correct.
yes.
And-
So what we've been doing is at the end of a fiscal year, when we're done, if we come in with a surplus, then we're allocating some of that money towards that unfunded
That's the whole
PERS.
idea I
Yes.
thought we were
Mhm.
doing. Okay, good.
We
So we're
are.
still doing that.
Correct,
Do we know
yes.
what the amount was this year?
I think we put another 50,000 into it, or
In addition to the 35?
to the 350.
No, okay, but this year in budget, you're showing 35,000. Coming from the general fund,
That's our cost to it, no. So I'm doing that true up at the end of the fiscal year. And
Okay.
when we have a surplus, then we're putting it into there. So that's not until the year is completed. So for 1920, I don't know where we'll be.
okay, but we've done it a year before, correct?
Correct.
You know what that was?
Yes, it was either 50 or 100,000 that we put in there.
Okay, good. Those are good things to do. All right, that helps us can't even speak anymore, but that helps us keep us above water as much as possible with that.
Correct,
Can you say there's an impact in 2024?
correct.
And can we cover that with existing monies going in? Or are we gonna
Yes.
have a balloon payment due
Well, we
in
got 350 in
2024?
It's not gonna be a balloon payment,
We're not gonna be in a dire,
no.
straight 4 years from now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what else did I have? I had a couple other ones, I think, and then I'm gonna let you go.
I was gonna say, what was interesting about that, I thought that, at the League of California Cities meeting about a year and a half ago, they were looking at, I think, this budget year as being the big one. But now it
Yeah.
seems to have spread off and, you
Yeah.
know,
All right.
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Tammy, that's it. I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was 2020.
It was supposed to be this, yeah.
So we'll continue to strive to be sustainable, basic service, and provide basic services to our citizens while being fiscally conservative, maintaining sufficient reserves in order to sustain future budget impacts, hopefully not another COVID. With the adoption of the fiscal policies, the city council is given clear and concise direction to staff to implement service to the community to ensure that services provided will not change the quality of life for our community. So our fiscal year budget 2021 meets most of our budget objectives, maintains the 33%, maintains our current level, incorporates the council manager goals, keeps the budget process open and easily understood. The one that was objective that is questionable was the minimal use of reserves, which we've kind of discussed about utilizing those for fiscal year 2021 while we're still remaining above our 33%. For fiscal year 19-20, the adopted budget had projected a deficit of $163,427. Now it's projected to have a $186,000 deficit, and that deficit was reflected within the estimated reserve funds within the budget. 2021, there is an operation deficit of $367, which we all know is primarily due to the loss of revenues projected as a result of COVID-19. Staff has minimized department budgets to assist in reducing deficits. We did lay off one position, and potentially what is being proposed is the deferred of hiring a police officer. Staff will continue to monitor the budget as the year progresses, including conducting the annual mid-year budget review. The budget provides the organization with the direction and tools necessary to maintain a consistent level of city services and continue the internal transformation to take advantage of our strengths and improve our weaknesses. Thank you to all the city staff members for their work on this year's budget and the continued city council commitment and support in the meeting the needs of the city. All right.
Very good, very good.
That ends our budget workshop.
You know, it's just a little after 7, and I'm looking at what we have meeting agenda-wise, and while the whole budget workshop is still very, very fresh, if there's anybody that'd like to take a break for a couple minutes, so let me know.